when I speak.
What was that, sorry?
Oh, no, it's okay.
Hang on a second. My title just, I believe we are live.
Hi, Anmol, how are you?
Good, good. There you go. Yes, we are live. Well, hello, John. Welcome to our Paris and Baz cast. Which is a segment, which is an online segment that we host, inviting new guest speakers to talk about topics that impact property management, sales and finance. This is round 2 for you. You've been a guest speaker with us previously as well, and we've learned a lot about Realty Protect through you there. So give me a sec. Yep, we are live. I just want to make sure. Okay. Yeah, we just, landlord insurance is one of those topics that is, a hot topic of discussion given the COVID-19. And I just wanted to get your insights on what Realty Protect's coverage is, what they are doing in terms of claims during this time, and what's coming up next. So give me a second. What Realty Protect, it always does this. Perfect. Okay. So look, to start off with, I just want to say that this particular information that we are providing here is applicable only to those that are existing members of Realty Protect. That's correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there's an embargo on new business sales at the moment.
Yeah. And what does that mean? And so basically no new business, is that right?
That's correct. It's a bit like when there's a bushfire coming to town, most insurers will stop selling insurance, and with the loss of rent section, because of COVID-19, there is an embargo on new business sales at the moment. Yeah. But existing policies would be covered in accordance with the policy wording, which is available on our website, which is www.realtyprotect.com.au. You can download your policy wording. Existing landlords should have that, but if you've misplaced it, you'll be able to get it online.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so basically, if you're already a member, which a lot of our clients are, the landlords that we provide coverage or property management services to, you guys are our main point of contact for landlord insurance. So this information will come in handy for those. We'll be circulating this video to them afterwards as well. So it is only applicable, the information we're sharing here is only applicable to the current members. And at this point in time, there is no new insurance being written due to the current COVID situation.
That's right, Anmol. And if we don't cover it today, they can call our 1300 number. Yep. That number is 1300 406 877. Yep. And somebody on our call centre will be able to help them with their inquiries.
Yeah, but there's lots of questions.
Yeah, but when talking about insurance, the insured should always refer to the product disclosure statement. That's got all the policy benefits and the terms and conditions. So everything's spelled out in there quite clearly, and it's really easy to read.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I guess sort of dissecting some of the frequently asked questions at the moment that you would be getting from your clients. Firstly, the big one is that are tenant defaults due to COVID-19 covered under the policy?
Okay, so if you look at our policy wording, first of all, I should say that basically every claim is basically assessed individually. Sure. What I'll talk about today is what our policy wording says. Mm-hmm. And pretty much so if you look at our policy wording, there's nothing in there to say, hey, you're covered for COVID-19. But what with COVID-19, tenants are still legally responsible for the rent. Mm-hmm. And if your tenant does default and your tenant and your landlord is insured with Realty Protect, then there's up to 20 weeks coverage for tenant default. Mm-hmm. So if they default, it's 20 weeks coverage. There's also the situation where the tenant, you might go to a tribunal and they're released from their rental agreement under the grounds of hardship. And if that's the case, then there's also 20 weeks coverage.
Is that 20 weeks is in total, correct? Not
for up to 20 weeks.
Up to 20 weeks, which will be assessed on a case-by-case basis and as individual to those circumstances. So up to 20 weeks of the rent that is declared at the time of providing coverage, is that correct?
Whatever the tenant's legally responsible.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So if they stop paying today and then by the time you got the premises back, then there'd be up to 20 weeks.
Yeah. Perfect, perfect. And in terms of the one of the questions, at the moment, what a lot of the landlords are offering is a discount on rent for a short period to be able to help out their tenants. Some are, still obviously just deferring the payment so that the tenant pays that portion at a later stage. For those that are writing down or reducing the rent payable, does that affect their policy?
It does actually. Basically, if you think of insurance, the insurance policy will only ever cover what the tenant is legally responsible for under the terms of the rental agreement.
Yeah.
And so if their weekly rent is, say, $500 a week and you've reduced that to $400 a week, and you've agreed to waive that $100, then that tenant is never legally responsible for that $100. That, for that $500, they're now responsible for $400. So if you've reduced their rent to $400 and then the tenant defaulted, so they stopped paying the rent, then the policy would respond by paying the $400 a week. If on the other situation, if you didn't agree to a discount and it went before a tribunal and they were awarded a discount by the tribunal, then that may be covered depending on the outcome under the grounds of hardship. So you get $500. I hope that
okay. So then at that time you get the full, if only the tribunal, make that decision.
Yeah. But taking COVID-19 out of the equation, if, for example, you guys are in the Walkham Hills area, if there was an oversupply of houses there and rents came down due to market conditions, saying the policy won't only ever cover what the tenant's legally responsible for. So if you've discounted the rent, then it would respond at that discounted rent if the tenant is.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And that obviously that amount, say for example, this is something that has happened with a lot of our landlords, is when they've been a client of yours for the last 2 years. When they've leased out a property at the beginning, it was leased for 600. They've tried to, the tenant has now moved on, they've leased it again, and now it's leased at 500. Does that, because obviously at the beginning when the policy was taken, 600 was declared, does that automatically, do they actually check again when they're doing the payouts, that what is the current rent payable?
Well, when you submit your claim, we ask to see the tenant ledger and a copy of the tenant lease. And the policy, well, on a standard policy, it's $360 where the weekly rent is up to $1,500. So anything, whatever they're legally responsible for, up to where the weekly rent is up to $1,500.
Okay, perfect.
And generally speaking, landlord insurance policies don't take into account market conditions. So if the market, if it went down or up, you basically just it would respond by paying whatever the tenant's legally responsible for. A bit like if somebody crashed into your car door or something like that, and that person is legally responsible to just make your car door good, nothing else. And that, whatever they're legally responsible.
Only fix that. And is there anything else during these current times? What are you finding that the claims are like? Obviously, hardship or tenant defaulting due to non-payment of rent is one thing. If the tenant, for an unfortunate reason, damages the property during this time, and because of what currently the stress levels and everything, what's the policy wording on that?
Okay, so basically. Again, if we take COVID-19 out of the equation, tenants are still legally responsible. Even if we leave it in the equation, tenants are still legally responsible for the rent. There's nothing in the legislation. If they're an impacted tenant, there's rules in place where you need to negotiate and all those sorts of things. But it doesn't say that they're not legally responsible for the rent anymore. So if the tenant does default, then the policy would cover as per normal, and that would be up to 20 weeks coverage. And then in our content section, if there was accidental damage or malicious damage or deliberate damage, then that would be covered up to $65,000 as well. And look, I speak to a lot of property managers every day. Houses, it is a bit harder to rent houses out, but they are still leasing out. It's not all sort of doom and gloom out there. And from a claims perspective, we haven't really had too many claims either. So, so it's, I think initially, everyone were all shocked by COVID-19 and the implications that might cause. But I speak to property managers every day, and and yes, things have slowed down, but houses are still renting out.
Yeah.
Most tenants have been quite good.
Yeah. And what about, say, for example, if your property stays empty after the previous tenant has vacated? Is there a coverage there, and it is difficult to resell due to COVID-19?
Yeah. So again, it's whatever where the insured risk is that tenancy. So it would come down to whatever that tenant is legally responsible for. So if just would come down to what kind of lease. So if they want a fixed term lease, or if they went on a week-to-week tenancy, it would be legally responsible for. So if, for example, a tenant was on a week-to-week tenancy and they moved out today without notice, then they're legally responsible to give 3 weeks notice.
Yeah.
So the policy would respond with the 3 weeks notice that they should have given.
Yeah.
If after the 3 weeks, for example, the market's just really slow and it was hard to find a tenant, then because that tenant isn't legally responsible for the rent, then that would be treated as market conditions and the landlord wouldn't be covered for that.
Sure. Okay. And when, like, from a claims perspective, obviously, say, for example, as of the last 4 weeks, the tenant has been in arrears and has not set up a payment plan and is, it has claimed hardship, is unable to pay. There's a possibility, because of now that you're not able to evict tenants, that situation can continue on. At what stage does an insured person put through a claim? I mean, does it have to happen after the event stops, or after the tenant leaves, or during they're still in the occupation of the property, but we don't know how long they're not going to pay rent for? You know what I mean? Is it? Yeah.
Okay. With that situation, normally you'd put a claim in when you know what the actual loss is going to be.
Yeah.
So, for example, if you do get a situation like that and your landlord's experiencing hardship, by all means, give me or give our call centre a call.
Yeah.
We will definitely try to help the landlord out. It would be treated as a case-by-case scenario.
Yeah.
But in normal circumstances, we would normally get a claim when the tenant has moved out and when you know what the actual loss is. Because, for example, you may have a tenant who may go on to JobKeeper or something like that, and then their money might come in a few weeks' time, and that might come good on it. So, so there's no need to make a claim. But if absolutely, you've got a situation where they're definitely not going to pay, give us a call and we can certainly have a look at it for the landlords. But normally it's when you know what the actual loss is going to be.
Yeah, so when it's happened, and I guess, but from the landlord's perspective, they're wanting that sort of continuity or assurance of being able to repay their debt. So it's putting that off may be a bit of a question for them.
We can certainly have a look at it, and it will be treated on a case-by-case scenario. But normally, it's when we know what the actual loss.
Yeah, absolutely. And how long does it actually take? So once you've put the claim through, once you put the paperwork through, what's sort of the process there?
Well, the claims that we've had recently, usually, they've been turned around in 7 days. It normally just depends if we've got all the paperwork, if we've got all the invoices. We've got a claims guide online with what needs to be included, and then the usual things like your tenant ledgers, termination notice, any tribunal hearing note, determination letters, and things like that.
Yeah.
If everything's there, it's usually a very quick turnaround.
Yeah.
It's just when we're waiting on invoices, or sometimes, for example, if suppose the paintwork in a lounge room has been damaged, and then we get a quote or we get an invoice to repaint the whole house, then we've got to go back to that painter, for example, and ask them to itemise the bill, because using the car example again, we're only really paying for the lounge room that's been damaged. We're not really paying for everything else to be painted.
Yeah.
So as long as the invoices are itemised, all the invoices are there, tenant ledgers are there, basically all the checklists that's online. If we've got all the information, pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, perfect. Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else that I may have missed that people have been asking, or does that pretty much sum it up?
Well, that pretty much covers it. So most of these claims will come from tenant default. I think the main points are, if there's tenant default, it's covered up to 20 weeks.
Yeah.
If you've been to the tribunal and the tenant is released under the grounds of hardship, that's covered up to 20 weeks.
Yeah.
Important to note that we can only pay what the tenant's legally responsible for. So if you do award a discount, you can't claim. It's pretty much whatever the tenant's legally responsible for.
Yeah.
One thing I should, now there's a lot of talk out there. Oh, what termination notices do we give if they're impacted, and all those sorts of things. So with an impacted tenant, if they fit the criteria of being an impacted tenant, you can't give termination notices, and those processes have changed. And there's a lot of talk about that in the insurance industry. But really, all our policy wording says with regards to that is that as the property manager, just need to follow all reasonable steps legally available to you to remedy the rental default. So, so sometimes property managers say, oh, they're an impacted tenant. Do I give a termination notice? Do I not give a termination notice? All our policy wording says is to follow all reasonable steps legally available to you as a property manager.
Yeah, because I've noticed even with the real estate, the real forms, REI forms, that the termination notices have been taken down at the moment. So it's not that you can actually issue a notice within.
That's right. So yes, whatever's legally responsible, you're legally available. We don't want you to go against the Residential Tenancies Act or the new government bill with regards to that. Just follow the process. And if they're impacted, so just follow that process. If they're not impacted, then you give a termination notice as per normal.
Yeah, perfect. And I guess $1 million question for those that don't have cover and want to get cover. Naturally, at the moment, there is an embargo. Is there any word of how long that may last, or when would you be open? And the other thing I've also noticed is that some companies are still providing coverage, but not for tenancy defaults or theft by tenants. So is there if you were to alter the coverage, is that being offered?
We are talking to the insurer at the moment, but I don't have a definite date. And as soon as that's available, I'll certainly let you know.
Okay. Look, it's good to see a lot of relaxing of the restrictions from this weekend on. So hopefully it's not too long before we can get coverage again, and get that sort of level of comfort from properties that have been leased out. So there you go. Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And we'll put in a link for Realty Protect, the number, and to be able to get in touch with them if you are a current client and wish to find out more. You'll be able to do that there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anmol. Thank you for having me. And if any of your landlords have any questions, feel free to give our call centre a call, or you can go to our website and download the policy wording. If it's in the wording, the insurer has to pay you. So definitely give us a call. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Have a good weekend. Thank you.
See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.